friend of mine sent me an email a couple of weeks ago that was incredibly disturbing and yet incredibly relevant on every level. And I've been, you can say, processing or playing with or dialoguing with this email for the 2 weeks since, and debating whether or not to share it with anybody, because it is unsettling. But in the end, sometimes we need to be unsettled in order to find stability or find something that is a resting place in a world of disturbing energies. So, this was a scientist writing to, I don't know who he's writing to, but he basically said the human race has 10 years left, possibly 20. And he said this based on global warming, the potential for nuclear threat, and on and on. You can all look at the news and get a sense of what could be throwing us into imbalance. I know a lot of people think, well, how could global warming happen so disastrously in 10 years? But one of the recent ice ages occurred over a 10-year period, 1 decade. So it can happen. I think those of us who have our eyes open at all these days really do have a sense that things are not as we would like them to be, that they definitely are changing in ways that we don't fully understand and absolutely that we don't control at all. So it's a little bit like a death sentence. In fact, it is a death sentence, except it's not a guarantee, but it definitely has a certain amount of authority and kind of punches you in the head. At least it punched me in the head. And I'm old enough to know that I may not have 10 years left, whether the world does or doesn't. And that's a big piece of information that does have a profound effect on me and the way I live. But it's a big pronouncement to put on all of you, and in my situation, on my grandchildren and my children. So I hesitated to even bring it up. On the other hand, if you can begin to explore your reaction to this information, how you will open to and witness the end of being, the end of days, the end of time, whatever you want to call it. And believe me, this has been prophesized for a very long time in many, many cultures, and we're still here. And chances are we will still be here in some fundamental way. Hard to know for sure, but what does it mean to face the possibility of complete, absolute human extinction? I mean, I could end the class right now, and you could just sit with that, because it's worth sitting with. Because it really, as you start to let this sink in, change, possibly, how you will address the rest of your life. Maybe even just how you will address this afternoon. How do you deal with the idea that all of this could go and be totally extinguished? Not to think of the difficulty of transitioning into extinguishment, annihilation. How do you deal with that stuff? Well, the entire spiritual journey is really exactly about annihilation. And annihilation is not about loss ultimately, it is about waking up. It is about liberation. It is about freedom. I know that doesn't make much sense in light of what I just said, but let me try to extrapolate it a little bit. We are already infinite, endless, eternal being. We are already that. You may believe me or not believe me, but that is what we are. We have eternity. We are eternity. The thing that stands between us and eternity is this thing that we call our mind, our ego, this thing that got born into eternity and thinks of itself as somehow separate. It's funny, we think we get born into eternity, but essentially eternity opens and transforms itself into us. And we very quickly so embody the physicality and the materiality of the world around us that one of the first things we do within about 2 years of our life is totally forget what it is that has formed us. And we buy into this miraculous manifested space and think of it in one way that's completely true, which is as an impermanent space. This space does not last all that long. It happens and goes away. Everything changes continually, including you. Everything has a peak period and a deterioration. Everything gets born and everything dies. Not a surprise, guys, although some people somehow feel surprised by it. But you, the material manifested person that you are, is totally temporary. The world that we live in is totally temporary. And in a certain sense, the greatest way to witness this world and to experience it is by letting go of the interpretive, mindful, egoistic persona that you become, which you need to become, in order to find your way back into the miracle of what it really is. Not many people do that. And in a way, the world is structured to completely capture your attention, to completely capture your identity, to make you feel this is everything and that it's important, that it's essential, that you have happiness, success, accomplishment, fulfillment. It drives you to that for its own purposes. And I and Rudy also truly believed that so much of the road to spiritual awakening is through fulfillment, through accomplishing the most you can accomplish, however obstructed that may be. And believe me, it will be obstructed. So anything you accomplish in life will be kind of hard won. But you will feel, if you reach out and work hard, a kind of sense of, I did it, I showed up, I did my best. This is an incredibly acquitting relationship to the universe. That's all it asks. Not that you get there, but that you make these enormously strideful efforts to arrive at something that feels whole. Part of that journey to feeling whole will be a sense that that wholeness does not exist outside you. Some people don't get there. A lot of people really believe that $1 million more will take care of everything, that safety will be a matter of fame and wealth and some kind of security, that progeny will take care of your brilliance and keep your legend, if you will, or legacy alive. We have all these illusions about life, but we don't feel secure and we don't feel totally content in it because everything we establish, everything we build, everything we accomplish in life is temporary. So the real journey, ultimately, is inward to a place that knows what I'm talking about, that realizes in some fundamental way that there is an infinite truth to your being that supersedes all of the outer stuff. But until you do your best with the outer, the inner journey seems like an escape, like a withdrawal, like a place that kind of frees you of having to do and to try, but it does not satisfy in that regard. Well, it might. It might. But I will only tell you from my journey, and I certainly watched Rudy's journey, the balance between trying and living and accomplishing and being in the world, balanced with trying, deepening, and being in the eternity of manifesting and unmanifested existence. That balance is somehow I can only call it, I guess, the secret. It's not to be completely inner and have the sense that the world is meaningless, because it's not meaningless. It doesn't make such an effort to exist just for the fun of it. Well, maybe it does, but then have fun in it. Go into the universe, embrace the universe. The balance between these two is essential. And the key to that is letting go of everything that wants to hold it as though it can last forever, because the thing you're holding will not last forever, but the thing that is reaching to hold, that deep being within you, is forever. There's this old line, you are the thing you're looking for. There's such truth to that. You are that. You are this vast, infinite being, lost and frightened by and insecure in the manifested world you're inhabiting. And that fear dominates. The ego mind creates stories that are so weighty and powerful that they hold you back. And then beyond our own personal story, we have the DNA story, the weaving of stories upon stories that are locked into our entire neurological system. And I look at all of you and I look at these stories. I get your narrative stories like a top little layer. And then we go down into the, oh my God, the history of your being from one generation to another, and they are really, really impacted and difficult and stressful. And most of you haven't even begun to dig into that incredibly dense space, but that's the journey. The journey in is freeing yourself of all of that impacted idea of who you are, the stuff you carry into your day and feel such heaviness and weight and misery or purpose and journeying, purpose in being in the world. Whatever it is you feel, most of us are locked into that. And how do you get out of that to feel the vastness of who you truly are? That's a process of surrender. Surrender is a process that is not intellectual. Surrender cannot be done through your mind or even letting go of your mind if there's a you letting go. The problem of surrender, and I want to surrender, and the problem of wishing to surrender, and the problem of trying to surrender, and trying to meditate, and trying to go deep, and trying to get there, and all of that, is that you're carrying the very thing along with you that needs to be obliterated. This mindful, egoistic entity in you is the problem. It's not exactly a problem, and if you make it a problem, it only gets worse. It's just a fragile creation that, if you go deeper than your mind, you enter into this realm of feeling. And I've talked about this, I think, a lot recently. You don't think your way to God, you feel your way. It's sensational. You go inside and you get involved in feeling. Now that's not easy on the superficial level, because these feelings are complicated and heavy, and most people are much more afraid of their feelings than their thoughts. Thoughts we can kind of handle, we can think our way out of them, we can go to a therapist, we can do all these things to deal with our thoughts. Feelings are just yours. How do you deal with your feelings? Well, the journey, a lifetime journey, is surrendering them and to them, and watching where they come from, what they are, feeling your way deeper and deeper into this being, this visceral sense of your own existence, And as you start to get past your own, my feelings, my thoughts, my ownership of all of this stuff, once you can kind of just relax that thing a little bit, this thing starts to go, goes deeper, and I will actually say higher simultaneously. You will begin to feel deepened and elevated. You will begin to feel free. You will begin to feel connected to something that will have no name and cannot be intellectualized, cannot be known by your brain at all. But it is the infinite reality within you. And you will know you're getting there because you will feel this extraordinary, there's no real word for it, but embrace, the fact that you're loved, the fact that you are the thing you are looking for, this beauty, this truth, this absolute radiant reality that you are, that sound like words probably when I say them, but believe me, they're not words. We sit in this class, and the whole class, really, one by one, is tuning into this truth. There is not one of you who in the course of this class doesn't get tuned in. Some of you get tuned in for a tenth of a second, some of you get tuned in for a minute. Many of you, once you're tuned in, start to go, "Ooh, this is great, I like this, can I hold on to this? What was that? That was," you get immediately into your mind, and my job in a way is to keep saying, nope, surrender, surrender. You don't have to understand this, you don't have to own it, you don't have to think it's going to be your salvation, you don't have to think anything, you just have to be in it. You don't even have to be in it, but if you allow yourself to be in it, it is completely freeing. When you touch that freeing beauty that is within you, which is touchable at any given second, and if you use this meditation practice to learn the entry points, to learn how to get there, to hand yourself over, to literally surrender your mind and your ego and your reaching effort and the thing that you think will have ownership of this experience. If you can let that go, it gets bigger. And every time you try to hold it and then you relax and let go, it gets bigger. Every time your mind comes in to say something to you, you just go, not now, it gets bigger. The quieter you are, the more you let this thing happen, the more you will touch, if you will, God in your life. Rudy said it's a life's work. I can only tell you that for me, it gets bigger by the day, even at this moment by the hour, even the minute. I cannot begin to describe how wondrous this is. It doesn't free you from the human condition. If your body hurts, it still hurts. If you're under duress, you're under duress. But what happens is you find this, Rudy called it muscle, and you just keep letting go. And it's shocking what you can let go of. You can just keep letting go. You surrender. And the more you surrender, the more this thing allows you to be who and what you are. So, the idea that you have 10 years left, the idea that the planet has 10 years left, that the human race has 10 years left, try for a moment to imagine the scope of 10 years in the realm of the infinite. Imagine how painful it is that you and all of this could go away like that. Imagine how unprepared you are for that transition. Imagine how awful it is to allow human life to expire. And then dive deep and realize that in the larger scheme of things, this 10 years, this human existence, the planet Earth, the solar system, on and on, are like that. The universe can recreate this. It doesn't care if it takes another 14 billion years or 100 billion years or 10 trillion years. Years don't mean anything because they don't exist, really. There is no time and there is no space until we manifest. So the idea of time and space is kind of our own kind of way of looking at the infinite aspect of being. we give it form, we give it duration, and we make it into something solid, when in fact it is quite immaterial. On the other hand, the material that we witness in looking at each other, in looking at the sky, in looking at the sidewalk, at looking at the trees, and looking at our loved ones, that is not to be dismissed lightly. There is something miraculous in what has been created here, beyond miraculous. And the real tragedy of life is not that it would be over, but that it will not be witnessed, that it will not be seen, that it won't be felt, that you will spend your whole life going about, what do people think of my haircut? Am I overweight? Do people like me? Don't they like me? Will I ever get to that $1 million mark? Whatever it is, whatever your mind is giving you, all of that. And what are you missing while all that's going on, or while you're watching television? How many episodes of whatever it is you're watching are going to take care of things? On the other hand, television was created for a reason, and it's a wonderful distraction, and enjoy it. But enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. Appreciate the ride. And then what I'm trying to get at is how awesome and simple and miraculous that ride is. Show up. Say thank you. Touch it. Touch the people you're with. Literally touch the people you're with. Love them. Love who you are. Love this experience. Say thank you over and over, because you can't say it enough. And try to see the difference between the grateful child and the ungrateful child. We just had Passover, and Passover talks about the different kinds of children. But I have to say, imagine yourself having a child who dismisses you as a parent, who dislikes you, who thinks you're not worth it, who thinks you're problematic, who would rather go on and be with their friends and with other people, who never says thank you to you, who never really acknowledges your presence. And then there's the child who wakes up and just says, I love you. I love you. Thank you. Imagine you're that parent. Where does your attention go? Where do you put your love? Of course, you want to work with the kid who can't stand you, because you love them. But the one who loves you, it's a direct route. It's a direct connection. Think of God at the moment as parent. Certainly many of us identify God in that kind of form. How does God respond to those who say thank you, and to those who are just in total ignorance, living in misery, pain, distraction, whatever it is that people live in? God reaches out to those people, but the direct line is to those who are reaching back. Those who love God are loved directly, and that love is one thing, it's one force. Those who don't love God live in the disturbance, which is actually as much a part of God as the love, but it has to be worked differently. And as I sit and teach class, and I look at each one of you and see all of your little, there's a Jewish word, babamais, all your little things going on, about how you are reaching and denying, trying to get there and then dismissing. There's the thing of piety, false piety, real openness, and then immediate distraction. Every one of you is complicated, truly complicated. And I keep trying, as a vehicle for this love, to find my way into that which will reverberate so loudly that when it rings, the bell rings, you will go, and maybe let it continue to ring forever. That would be my gift to you if I could make that happen. But really, it's up to you. That's where surrender comes in. Letting go, surrender is so key. And yes, the you that's trying to surrender cannot be surrendered by you, because it's a very attempt to surrender is a way of getting by the act of having to surrender. It's trying to get something for surrender. That doesn't work that way. Real surrender is awakening. Real surrender is the realization there's nothing to be surrendered. It's already happening. You're already not in control. You're already a helpless being moving through the universe, moved by forces and energies you cannot comprehend, and given a life and given the opportunity to live in a world. And if you can surrender Joy and love will come out of that experience, and you will begin to witness your own truth. You will begin to witness God in your life, and you will walk around as a grateful, amazed person, full of wonder and full of the truth that you are looking at every given moment at creation, living and present in your life. This is what we're doing. This is the journey. If you're not in that, if you're not on board with that, then, you know, work it. It's better than the alternative. Find your way to that space, because that space is in you. And if you don't, you only have 10 years left. Maybe. We maybe all have 10 years left. And just try to imagine how that impacts your relationship to your children, to your parents, to the friends, to your husbands and wives, to the people you care about. What does it look like to look at people who have death already present? What does it look like to look at people who are not going to be around for very long? What does it feel like to be in a group of human beings who cuddle together in terror because the world is going to end and they don't know what to do? Who are you in the midst of all of that? Can you love them and bring light to the fear that may erupt as a result of all that? Can you overcome your own fear? It's a really interesting situation, because if you can do it, you will be of great service. If you can't do it, you'll join the ranks of people frightened and struggling and trying to come to grips with what's going on. But whether the world ends in 10 years or in 100,000 or 100 million years, it will end. The human race will end. You will end. And knowing that changes everything, everything. And how you live moment to moment, day by day, is far more impacted by that reality and that realization than not believing it. And trust me, you watch the news and you watch all these people looking to get money, and to, you know, oil companies wanting to pollute the world for their own mansions. You know, you look at stuff like that and you go, wow, what ignorance. What don't they get? What don't they understand? Well, you're not going to teach them. But teach yourself and let them be the warning sign. Let them be the example of what not to be. The world is important, not for your wealth, but for the joy and beauty of being itself. Try to carry that forward. Carry it into the day when you leave here. Try to feel the universe around you as the miracle that it is. I mean, I can go through the list and try to enumerate every part of the miracle, but for me, there is no part of it that's not miraculous. You know, I try to talk about the idea of chairs, windows, ceilings, ground, grass. I mean, it, you know, doesn't stop. When you recognize all of what is and the precious nature of its impermanent reality, you will walk around in a state of grace, in a state of awe, in a state of gratitude, in a state of wonder, and that's the ride we're on, and you are on the precipice of knowing what I'm talking about. So do your best to find your way into this, and if you think that the world's ending in 10 years, that may help. And if it does end in 10 years, it will have been worth it. And if it doesn't end in 10 years, it will be worth it. So do your best. Any questions?
Hearing that news, I have like 1,000 questions somewhere. Hearing that news, what you got, have like 1,000 questions, so I'll try to reduce it to 2.
Okay.
I'm interested what your psychic spiritual reaction was when you first, if it resonated with you or not. And then we're all here. I mean, there's the belief that we've constructed this reality, we've manifested ourselves, we take part in that. So can we reverse that? And then I'm just curious, what will become of us if the world does end? Where do we go? What plane existence do you feel?
Well, my first reaction was, yes, I think this could be true. Powerful. Then I spent 2 weeks asking those questions. I think I know where we go when it's over. as a human race, as a collective consciousness. And it's a beautiful space. It's nowhere that we haven't been and aren't right now. It just is the unmanifested version of the manifest. It's a place, I believe, trust me, I don't think believing in other people's beliefs is the way to go, but I believe that we end up in the space of all creative love that exists in the universe, that's our home, that it's a playful, joyful, wonderful reality, and that we tried this one and it didn't necessarily play out well. On the other hand, it created people like you. So I would like this to go on for people like you guys, because it seems worth it. My grandchildren want a shot at this. I love this world. I love it. I hate what's happening to it. I don't know where it really goes. This may just be a warning sign across the bow, you know, that pay attention and see what you can do. But one of the great teachings, unfortunately, is mostly we're helpless. We have to ask for help from that which we can't even understand, but it provides help. And we can do little things, like appreciate the miracle, love where we can, day to day. And you'll see when you start to process what I was saying today, you'll start to reach out differently to people. When you hug somebody and know that they got 10 years left, it's different than hugging them when you don't have any concept of that at all. You will live differently. You can live differently if you want to. Or you can fall back into unconsciousness and spend all evening watching, I don't know what, The Americans, or I don't know what's on television. I can't watch it anymore. But I do know there's all of these distractions, and they're not bad. There's nothing wrong with watching TV, but I will only tell you, once you start to connect to the wonder of all of this, you don't have to go anywhere to get it. You don't have to turn on a tube or turn it off. It's just prevalent, unendingly so, except that in these terms, it has an end. It has an end. Like I said a minute ago, the universe is infinitely there. And so our having manifested as a race of beings is very, very recent. And it's very temporal, and it's created some beauty and wonder, and it's created some awfulness. And I think it's a terrible balance, that between the two, but people like you come into the world and you bring joy and you bring grace and you bring light, and that seems to be part of what it wants. Can it balance out the dark part? We'll see. We shall see. It's definitely threatening on one level. On another level, it's awakening. It's awakening to the one truth that Buddha tried to teach. It's all impermanent. It's one thing to think about your own impermanence, but the race's impermanence, that's hard. And most of us put that off into the millions of billions of years from now. If it's really 10 years, how do you walk through the day? How do you drive down the freeway? What is your experience? Looking at all these people around you who totally do not know that they have a time clock clicking really quickly. And we have, right now we have this bizarre government and these bizarre forces at work with all these crazy powers that could destroy us. Insanity really playing out. How do you interact with that? Well, you can't do anything about it, really. Maybe it's in the election, but other than that, you can be the countervailing force that presents love into the world to overtake the ignorance, more than hatred. There's the ignorance that prevails. So that's a job. It's worth it. And then the more you surrender, whatever happens, you will understand that you are forever. You are not going to disappear. Your mind, body, self that you know will disappear, but what will remain is free and joyous and infinite, has always existed, will always exist, maybe not manifestly, but unmanifestly, as a reality that is all there is. And again, trust me on this or figure it out for yourself, because I don't think it's a knowable truth as much as it is an unknowable reality. And I know that doesn't make much sense, but for me, the diving deep has taken me to a pool of assurance, if you will, that we're okay.
I appreciate the subtle distinction between annihilation and, say, non-attachment and surrender. The last two obviously being there's a subject having to surrender something, the other being let's see what happens when none of it exists in my experience this morning was I kept hearing the echoing Rudy's voice and your voice of, you know, the teacher's here to take your shit, so give it to him. But it's almost like asking for like my favorite jacket, and you don't want to, and then finally you're like, okay, fine, I'll give it to you, and what's left is everything other than the shit, and then the voice is like, well, no, you have to give that up too. Like, oh, but, and you do that. And then there's something else that seems to be behind that, and then you continue, like almost trying to annihilate as fast as you can. And as you were mentioning, like, there's still something.
In truth, you know, it really isn't true that you keep trying to annihilate. At a certain point, you've handed annihilation over. You don't have to do anything. It's happening. You get to my age and you realize the speed with which it's happening, and that everything you think, believe, know to be true is also being annihilated. So you got nothing. You have nothing to hang on to. However, here's this person sitting in front of you who is evaporating as we speak, and it is speaking to you not through the Bruce guy, because Bruce, I cannot tell you, is so far from the stage at this point. But this thing that is speaking to you has its own voice, and I would listen to it. There's a lot of listening taking place here. I'm not owning it, identifying with it, trying to build something. I'm done building. What am I going to build at this point? All I can do is be, you know. Now I'm a photographer, you know, so I'm trying to build photography. But if they took it away from me in this instant, I don't care. It's just fun. It's just fun seeing and capturing and looking and witnessing the world. But watching this whole thing come, knowing it's all very ephemeral, and finding beauty in that. The beauty, the love that underlies that. Blanche and I are, you know, we've been together next year, 50 years we've been married. The true love of that is only now starting to reach a place that I never knew existed. Never. And it's like 50 years. We had to go through all of the stuff everybody goes through to keep arriving at this surrendered space that finally realizes who you've been living with your whole life. You've been living with your maker. You've been living with God. Trust me, there's nobody else around. Never has been. Knowing that is everything. It's everything. And when you finally wake up to that, it's wow. And you don't have to be angry or thrown by this idea that this isn't a person. You start to get like, oh my God, this is a being. This is being itself. We have been dancing with each other. We have touched each other. We have created new life with each other. We have lived together. You start to realize that, you know, all the angularities and all the frictions that start to come up in that, we're all part of that incredible dance. And you find at my age, 75, that it's just starting to be completely opened up. And you go, oh, and you can keep going, thank you. I mean, on all day long. And I wish that for everybody, because I see other people around me who are still angular, who are still combative, who are still not recognizing that. Most people, I think, are not recognizing it. And I can only tell you, let go, surrender, be annihilated, if you will, where there's no you trying to do it, because the you trying to do it is always problematic. The non-you is already there. It goes, it just realizes and recognizes what always has been. That's the value, and it's a great thing. And I'm a salesman for annihilation, if you will, or a salesman for waking up and finding who you are.
Who is the scientist?
I don't know. I really don't know.
It was an anonymous email.
I kind of, yeah, it was a kind of a thrown at me by somebody who's a awakened guy who wanted me to read this, and it was a letter to another woman who was awakened, and her response was very interesting. And the letter that I read was basically her response to that information, but she had stage 4 cancer. And she said she had every reason in the world to be afraid, and that she knew that death was coming for her. And so this information was a bigger piece of information than her own death. And she started to say things like her terror at being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer was mind projected. She said day by day, she's having a wonderful life. Day by day, she's happy to be alive. She smells the flowers. She's experiencing life. And she said, you can have this horrible information, but it doesn't change. If anything, it heightens the fact that you finally get a chance to recognize the brilliance and the genius and the miracle and the mystery of where we are right now. That's the gift of all of this. And I don't know many people who really do, and I used to think I did, but as I am expanding with this awareness, I'm realizing I was never close to what's starting to happen now. And as Rudy said, it's a life's work, and I'm a spokesperson for that, because it doesn't, when everything literally is falling apart, when your body is disintegrating, when your kids are off on their own, when your career is way in the past, when all that stuff's falling away and all the accomplishments mean nothing to anybody, you're just a guy walking down the street. Wow, that's when it really kicks in. You go, I don't have to be anyone. All that effort, I don't bemoan it, I had a great ride, but letting it all go is the freedom. Just
I remember, because I feel like I experienced that before I went into brain surgery, and everything got brighter and colors got brighter, and I thought I was going to die. It is I think if you do live a spiritual life, you do feel conscious and appreciative, and living is much more expensive. I don't think it's, in my experience, post-brain surgery, waking up after 6.5 hours in the ICU, projectile vomiting, I don't know if it's possible to hold on to that. I wasn't able to.
no, you can't.
Because the human condition is so severe. But what I was going to say is I've just been lucky enough, because I'm doing a project where I'm around a lot of scientists, mostly people in AI, and no one else is saying this. And they're at the highest level of scientists, that the most well-funded research in the world. 12 of them just did a panel for Elon Musk's film. All of this, no one else is talking about this. They're saying that things will rapidly change, superintelligence. There's a lot of discussion going on, and it's very exciting. In fact, I think you can see the film for free online for the rest of this weekend. But I'm not hearing that the world is ending in 10 years. Maybe as we know it, and there will be some type of hyper intelligence that will be.
I think you're processing this too much. Take it to just, I'm trying to get at something more than the fact of
I
it.
understand, but I'm just saying the danger in doing that with projecting a lot of fear into.
Well, trust me, most people project fear into every step of the path. And I'm just trying to give you a way of looking based on something that was sent to me and triggered something in me that I felt I should share. And all I can say is, you can't hold on to what I'm saying. Holding on is always a fruitless experience. It can't be held. It can never be held. It can only be surrendered to and allowed to be, where you're not somebody who's trying to benefit from this experience, trying to get safe, trying to become knowledgeable, trying to become wise. You have to let it all go. The true wisdom and the true freedom is not holding on, but living in that space that is eternal and infinite.
Isn't that about even being present in the moment?
Yes,
Right?
but-
Thinking about 10 years?
but you-
I'm confused in terms of worrying about, or not worrying, but trying to live in someone else's projected idea about the future.
Don't live in their projected idea of
But
the
it
future.
is, because no one really knows what will happen.
That's exactly right. Nobody knows. But the metaphor, if you will, of what I'm saying is that it's all about a temporary reality. And at some point, this will be true, more than likely. And it may not be for billions of years, and it may be in 10. One way or the other, let that inform how you live now.
But isn't what I'm trying to just get at is when I was able to be in that level of appreciation before something that was so huge and life-threatening and a 50-50 chance of making it or not. The only way to appreciate things at that heightened level was to be in that moment and not even think about.
Yes, yes, no, that's it.
Isn't that what to arrive at, rather than thinking about
Yes,
the ending?
yes. Oh, absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
The only place to live is this moment. But if you try to hold on to this moment, that moment's going to leave you, and you're still trying to hold it. The holding on to the moment is not an actual holding pattern, it's a being pattern. Letting go leaves you in the moment. Holding on leaves you in time and space. Holding on to the moment cannot happen, because that moment's already gone. The one you just held on to is gone. So where do you get the muscle to hold on to the next one, and this one, and this one, and this one? And you can't be done.
To be in it, and then to
Say again?
transition into the next, to just be.
That's the whole teaching. The whole teaching is just to be, and learn to be. But the truth is, when you get to learning how to be, the you that's learning evaporates, and being remains. There is no you, ultimately, to learn it, except for this manifested period where there's that idea that there is a you. And that's the whole journey of the human experience, to become the you that finally lets go of itself. That's the journey, and we're all on it.
Okay, because I don't believe you're a scientist at all. I think it's a totally manufactured.
That's fine. I don't know that I believe it either. I don't think
Yeah,
belief is the
but
issue.
I just want to put that out there because I really don't. In fact, even in terms of being with really authentic scientists, I don't.
Tara,
So
that's
I
fine.
just want to leave that out there as another perspective.
Please listen to Tara. She doesn't believe it.
But
Stop. Andrew?
I think I have a question about God. I think it's a question I've been meaning to ask for about 20 years, but you really framed it today in a way that sort of activated for me. I could, especially when you're talking about the idea of children, I just know how special that feels, and I'm even yelling from the back, have a great day at school, and I love you, and you hear that from your kids, and you hear two kids go, I love you, Daddy, and I'm like, amazing. And then I go, I could see God, and I'm leading to the question, I'm looking at me going, that sucker never says I love you to me. He's selfish, he's a fool. He has 1 minute where he gets the ephemeral, he lets go, a little bit of freedom, he is. And then 2 weeks of entrenchment in the misery, the combativeness, and never, still won't say to me, I love you. And,
Who do you think you're saying I love you to?
well, that was my question. Who am I, that's my question.
When you say I love you to your children, who do you think you're talking to?
It feels them and bigger too. It feels like there's a oneness, a wholeness.
Trust me. Every other is all one reality.
Well, that's my question. But is there like an image? I know we talk about God in a non-dualistic sense. There isn't separation. It's not little I here, big I up there, us, diminished, God, immense.
Well,
but when I want to talk to God, I do want to picture something. Is there something? Do you have an image? Is there an image? I guess my question is there an image of God?
it looks exactly like, yes, it looks like your daughters. Trust me, it looks like your daughters. It's evolving, it's manifested in that form for the moment, because nobody can hold on to a picture. I am aware of a hierarchy or of an elevated reality that is enveloping all of us, and I have a kind of a reach into and a dialogue with that ephemeral but deeply tangible reality. And it is, there is something that is both beyond us and at the core of who we are. We're not separate from it, but there is the molecule knowing the entire universe of existence as being one thing. But when you're the molecule and the whole universe, trust me, there's something bigger than you. And if you want to know what it looks like everything that you see. There is nothing that isn't it. Nothing, trust me, nothing that isn't it. And it can be warring with itself, it can be destroying itself, it does all those things. It creates, it destroys, it manifests, it unmanifests. It's going on all the time. The human mind cannot grasp this thing, but you are in it, of it, with it, and looking at it and living with it every instant of your life. When you suddenly go, life changes.
Do you have a visual image of this non-molecular, molecular?
Like I tried to say a little earlier, it's not intellectual. You can't get to it intellectually, or you can get close to it. Einstein got close to it. You can have an imagination and a vision of it. But for me, and I think for many beings, it's this visceral feeling. I feel its presence. I feel it. When you hug your daughters, you are feeling what it feels like. That's all I can tell you. And if you can start to feel that for everything around you, which, trust me, begins to manifest, you start to have this sense of everywhere. It is everywhere. This love is infinite eternal, and it's a felt presence rather than an acknowledged, intellectual, visualized presence, although it is visualized by all of us. I look at you as God. I see other as God. I want to love, touch, hug, acknowledge, dialogue with, share with the self. And that's how it's done. The reason we are brought into this manifested state is because how do you do it otherwise? I don't know the mind of God really, but I get the sense that the mind of God is learning its own truth through us. And we are mostly, how can I say, ignorant of that process, but we're growing into it. And if it takes 1 billion human incarnations or, whole universes created to do it, it doesn't matter, because there is no time, there is no space. This thing just is forming. And if it is all an illusion, if it's all just particles, if it's all just an alternate reality, a virtual reality, doesn't matter. I take one step outside and go, give it to me. I'll take this virtual reality. I will take whatever this thing is. It is unbelievably amazing. And it is for all of us if we stop long enough to look and surrender to its beauty. Enough? Okay. Love you guys. Truly love you guys. And, same time, same station. Next month we'll be back. Okay? Thank you.